The 2024 NFL Draft is full of star talent already. Today we are going to be looking at the way too early preseason 2024 mock draft, seeing where we think every team might go, some of the best prospects in the draft and where they might land. Let's dive right into it here. First up, starting with the Arizona Cardinals, I do expect them to have the worst record in the league, and I do expect them to go with Caleb Williams, the quarterback out of USC. He can just do a lot of amazing things on the field. His ability to improvise, his ability to make plays when nothing really is there, escape the pressure, keep his eyes downfield, make a play with either his legs or his arm. He's got all of the natural talent there. A lot of comparisons to Patrick Mahomes. I can totally see why. Obviously unfair to compare anybody to the best player in the league right now, but he definitely has all of the traits really that you look for in a number one overall pick, and I would be absolutely shocked if he is not the number one pick next year. At number two, we might have the best pure player in the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. Getting Williams and Harrison on the same team would just be outrageous. Marvin Harrison was a great player for Ohio State last year. He was the best wide receiver in the nation, and he really lives up to that Marvin Harrison name. He is bigger than his dad, but he has the same route running savviness, the same amazing hands. He really has everything that you would look for in a wide receiver prospect. The best since Jamar Chase, certainly, but he is absolutely one of those blue chip, perhaps generational type wide receiver prospects. Ohio State was noticeably different without him on the field, and I definitely think he will be a top 3 pick in this draft. Really just depends on where the quarterbacks go. At number 3, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going to go with Drake May. Drake May has gotten a lot of Justin Herbert comparisons, and I can see why. He absolutely has the big arm. He's a pretty good processor. He's decently accurate. He's also got some wheels as well. He can run a bit. He's not going to run through you necessarily, but he's got kind of deceptively good speed. I do think he needs to speed up his processing a little bit more. There's still plenty for him to improve on, but I really do think he is really good quarterback prospect. I think he would have been kind of on that same tier with Bryce Young this year. So definitely, if Caleb Williams wasn't in this class, I definitely think he could go number 1 overall. There's always that chance still, but I think May would be a very good pick for the Buccaneers, who need a new direction at quarterback. Next, we have number 4, the Indianapolis Colts. Going to go with Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. Fashanu has probably the most polished pass protection technique of offensive tackles coming out recently. He's just so fluid, and he's such a good athlete in that area. It looks so natural. He's not the nastiest run blocker. I think he could add that to his game. He's more just kind of walling guys off, but I definitely think Fashanu has a chance to be a top 5 pick. He's just so smooth in, the most important aspect of playing offensive tackle when it comes to just being out in space, moving his feet, looking really good with his hand placement and pass protection. He is just a great prospect and somebody that the Colts could absolutely use to really kind of protect Anthony Richardson moving forward. Next, we have the Washington Commanders. Going to go with another quarterback here. I really liked Michael Penix when I watched him. He really hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout his entire career. He's going into his 6th season and only has completed 1 full year. That was last year at Washington, where he was one of the most efficient and really good passers in the entire college football landscape. I think if he can repeat that, show he's 2 years removed from serious health concerns, obviously those are always going to be there, but for the Commanders, if Sam Howell doesn't work out, I think Penix could be a really interesting option. He's got a really underrated arm. It's a great arm. He's got good accuracy, good processing. He really has all of the traits that you look for, in my opinion, to be a top 5 pick. I was thoroughly impressed by what I saw with his tape. It's just, is he going to be able to get through a full season and really kind of show that he can remain healthy? He is also going to be an older prospect, so that will be something that will have to be considered as a 6th-year player. But I loved Michael Penix Jr.'s tape. He absolutely is one of the more talented quarterbacks in this class. Next, we have the Green Bay Packers. Going to go with Jared Verse out of Florida State. The Packers just love accumulating their edge rushers. Obviously, you already have Rashawn Gary. You have Lucas Van Ness, who you just drafted, who is kind of versatile. Jared Verse is just so good that you could obviously go in a lot of different directions, but I just love what Jared Verse does. He was a player I was very surprised went back to school because I thought he would have been a top 10 pick this year. I definitely think he can build on that because he's just very polished. He's very efficient in his pass rush sets. I think he's a pretty decent run defender as well. So Verse is definitely somebody that I really like, and I could totally see somebody in the top 10 falling in love with him. That's the Packers here. At number 7, up next, going to go with cornerback KoolAid McKinney. He's the best corner in this draft. Smooth mover, good athlete. He's really polished. gone up against the best competition in the SEC at Alabama, and I think he is pretty head and shoulders above the rest of this cornerback class. For the Raiders, Nate Hobbs is a decent corner, but you've got a whole lot of question marks on the back end of that defense besides him. And KoolAid could definitely come in and help solidify that. He also has one of the best names in the draft as well. So absolutely love that pick for the Raiders there. Up next, the Titans. Going to go with J.C. Latham. And Latham is still very much a work in progress. He is the right tackle for Alabama, and he has showed some really good things. He is a huge behemoth of a human, and he's definitely hard to move. You really can't bull rush through him. He's a really good run blocker. He showed some nastiness. It's just about the consistency in pass protection, not getting beat around the corner, having consistently good hand placement, knowing when to strike, when to let your defender come to you, being able to anticipate counter moves and other opportunities for the defensive lineman to beat him. He does need to get much more refined in that area, but he is a great athlete, a really good run blocker. He's somebody that is just a huge offensive lineman. For the Titans, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, he is somebody that I can definitely see them falling in love with. Next, we have the LA Rams. Going to go with Brock Bowers. Bowers has been a fantastic college football player for the past 2 years. Really just can't come out yet. I do think he is the best tight end since Kyle Pitts. Might even be better. He's a bit undersized, but he's a really underrated blocker, and he is just one of the most dynamic yak weapons in college football. You get the ball in his hands and just let him go to work. They run jet sweeps with him. They hand the ball off to him just because he's that dynamic when he has the ball in his hands. Defenders just bounce off of him. He's really, really good in kind of the short and intermediate game. Get the ball in his hands and just let him go downfield and get to work. He's not necessarily the most dynamic seam stretcher. He can do it for sure. He's showed some good contested catch ability. I think he's a very complete prospect. Tight ends, do take some time to adjust. I do think, though, that he will be a top 10 pick just because of the pure talent. He showed it against the best competition at Georgia, and he's definitely a top 10 player in this class for me. Next, we have the Chicago Bears. I'm going to go with McAfee here for Ohio State. You obviously have the Ohio State connection, Justin Fields to Ibuka. I do think with Ibuka, he is the second best wide receiver in this class as well. He showed some really, really good things at Ohio State. He is kind of the 1B option. With Marvin Harrison there, obviously he might not be going against the number one corner on every team, but he's definitely cooking them. He's really good in the short to intermediate game. I think he can play from the slot. I think he can be a Z kind of player as well. He's somebody that I think the Bears could really use. You've got DJ Moore. Obviously Claypool and Mooney are there. Likely you're going to lose one of them because they're both free agents at the end of this year. So I think addressing the wide receiver's position would certainly be something that would be in play for them. Up next, going to go with Dallas Turner. Turner can really kind of turn the edge. He can be a really dynamic option when it comes to rushing the passer. He's got an explosive first step, and all of those traits are really, really nice to see. He's not the best run defender. He's certainly willing to do it, but he is just on the smaller side there. He kind of reminds me of Yannick Ngakoue, who they just signed, and I definitely think that he's probably more of a rental option. Getting somebody that can truly get after the passer and really be a alpha 1 edge rusher on that defensive line is going to be really important for Matt Eberflus moving forward. Up next, we have the New England Patriots. Going to go with Joe Alt. He just feels like a Patriots pick. He's maybe not the most high ceiling kind of player, but he's really, really good at what he does. He's tall, pretty athletic. Showed some really good things at Notre Dame for the past few years, stepped in and been a really quality starter pretty much from day one. I definitely think that for the Patriots, they've got some aging tackles. They've got some uncertainty at tackle as well. He could certainly come in and just kind of provide that stability. I just think he's going to be a really solid pro from day one. Maybe he doesn't have top 5 traits like J.C. Latham or Olaf Ashanu, who went before him, but I do think that he probably has the highest floor as well, just coming in and being a really nice, solid player from day one. I definitely think Ulch could be that kind of player. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Going to go with Johnny Newton out of Illinois. Really liked him when I watched him as well. He's kind of got that penetrating 3-tech type ability. He's a little bit undersized, but somebody that can really kind of penetrate, shoot gaps, and be a dynamic game wrecker in that backfield. I think the Falcons really could use that. You have Grady Jarrett, who can do some of that for sure, but he's getting up there in age. You've got some edge rushers who you've brought in, Calais Campbell. I think you just need to continue to add to that defensive line, really kind of make that a true strength of this team. If you could get some really fun pass rush packages with Javon Newton out there as a true 3-tech on pass rushing downs, I think he will absolutely eat at the NFL level. Somebody the Falcons could desperately use. They need to continue to get after the quarterback, and he could certainly provide that from the interior, which is an incredibly valuable trait for NFL teams. Up next for the New York Giants at number 14. The Giants have looked to address the wide receiver position, but I think they are going to need a number one alpha receiver. Not quite sure why he's so low here, but Malik Newman, I definitely think, could be that player that really kind of rises up boards. He's my number 3 wide receiver right now. I just love what he can do for LSU. He can line up all over the formation, has great hands, really good separator. His route running is really kind of what makes him a great wide receiver. With an LSU team that I do expect to be pretty decent this year, I do think Newman is going to have a great opportunity to show off his ability and really kind of prove that he is a top 3 to 5 receiver in this class. I definitely think he is one of the best out there, and the Giants absolutely need to add to this wide receiver room and get that number 1 wide receiver. Newman could be that player for them. At number 15, up next, going to go with the Denver Broncos taking Leonard Taylor out of Miami. Leonard Taylor is somebody that hasn't always been the most consistent, very highly recruited, somebody that I do think has shown the flashes to be a great player, just needs to put it all together on a consistent basis. If he's able to do that at Miami this year, certainly could be somebody that we're talking about as a top 15, top 10 player in this class. For the Broncos, you haven't had a lot of really great players on that interior for a couple of years now. I think Leonard Taylor really could be that player for him if he's able to reach his potential. I definitely think that this would make a lot of sense for both sides there. Up next, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Going to go with JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. Just needs to be consistent, like a lot of these defensive linemen we've talked about. He has shown the flashes. His game against Penn State was one of the best games by a defensive player in college football last year. Had a ton of turnovers, sacks, was just doing it all. He just needs to be a lot more consistent on a down-to-down and a game-to-game basis. And, the flashes are absolutely there. He's a number 1 overall recruit for a reason, but I just think that he needs to put it all together, be a consistent playmaker for him. He's going to have a great opportunity to do so at Ohio State this year. I'm really excited to see what he can do. For the Seahawks, they need to get much better against the run. Tuimoloau absolutely has the frame to be a great run defender. I think he's shown flashes of that for sure as well. So definitely somebody the Seahawks could use and be a good addition to their defensive line there. Up next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going with another Ohio State player. They tend to like Ohio State players. Going to go with Denzel Burke, the corner out of Ohio State. I think he's a little underrated by a lot of people. Some people are coming on to him, but he just doesn't necessarily have the ball production that makes him look like a top corner prospect. He's not coming away with a bunch of interceptions, but he started at Ohio State as a freshman and really has grown into a very nice, complete player. His coverage skills are just really impressive, and somebody that I think, he doesn't have the ball skills because nobody throws to him, basically. He's not the most complete player, but in a corner class that, I think has KoolAid and then a lot of guys just kind of battling for that corner 2, corner 3 spot, I think Burke could certainly be that player that comes away, that teams are really impressed with just because of his lockdown coverage ability. And I definitely think for the Steelers, you've got Joey Porter Jr., who can potentially be your corner 1 of the future. Burke can step in and be a great corner 2. Obviously, great wide receivers in that division with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham as well. So definitely players that the Steelers will need to guard. And I definitely think that they could use a player like Denzel Burke on that back end there. Up next for the Minnesota Vikings, they will have to address quarterback eventually here. I do think it might be something that they look to address now. Quinn Ewers could be a very interesting option for them. Number 1 overall recruit of all time, according to some sources. Definitely just exudes physical ability, has an amazing arm. He is a bit wacky mechanically. He has a weird sidearm release. His footwork isn't always the most smooth. He's not just the most natural quarterback. He has an absolute rocket arm, and he has all of the ability, the athleticism to be a great quarterback, potentially somebody we're talking about as a top 10 quarterback in this class, but he just needs to put a lot of those things together. He'll have a lot of opportunities with great receivers at Texas. I think they have all the chances to make him a great quarterback here, but I do think he's somebody that we'll probably be talking about as either a top 10 pick or potentially somebody that went back to school because he really disappointed. For the Vikings, Kirk Cousins is getting older. He can't be your option forever, and I think Quinn Ewers would be a good swing in the first round to really kind of take a chance on getting that franchise guy. Next up, we have the Houston Texans with DeMeco Ryans at that head coaching spot. I do think they are going to look to address the pass rush. You obviously got Will Anderson last year. Going to go with Michael Hall this year out of Ohio State. He's really a penetrating 3-tech pass rusher. He's undersized. He's kind of in that Kalijah Kancey mold where he's very undersized, but he's an explosive 3-tech penetrator, somebody that can really kind of get after the quarterback and be somebody that's very disruptive from the interior, which is hard to find at that spot. Usually they're just big, beefy, guys that maybe can shed a block here or there, but they're not really penetrating and pushing the pocket and getting after the quarterback. Michael Hall can do that. Now, he wasn't even a full-time starter necessarily last year, was dealing with some injuries as well, so he does need to put it together, and some teams will be put off by his size, but I do think that D'Amico Ryans has done a really good job with some undersized defensive tackles in the past, and I think that Michael Hall could be a great player for them moving forward and really kind of be that pass rush spark that they need from the inside. At number 20, we have the New Orleans Saints. They did take Brian Brzee last year on the interior, but I still think they can add to that room. Going to go with Mason Smith out of LSU, obviously kind of a hometown kid there. I definitely think that would be a fun pick for them. Just really kind of exploded as a true freshman, was a great player, very highly recruited, somebody that showed amazing flashes as a true freshman. Came in his sophomore year and played just a few snaps before getting a season-ending injury in game 1. So there's just kind of a lot of unknowns with Mason Smith. Is he going to build on those flashes he showed as a true freshman, really take that next step? If so, he might be a top 10 player in this class. If not, he definitely might not be. Might go back to school, might be a second or third round pick just based off physical traits alone. It's hard to tell with Mason Smith, but I definitely think the upside is absolutely there. Him and Brzee would be a really fun, explosive defensive interior there. And after losing pretty much everybody, David Onyemata, Shai Tuttle, pretty much everybody they had in that interior room, I think getting Smith and Brzee back-to-back years would be a really good replacement for a lot of those guys. Next for the Miami Dolphins, going to go with Marius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. He's somebody that I think is going to be a riser in this draft. A lot of people are kind of split on him. Some have him as a top 3 tackle in the class. A lot of them don't have them in their top 5s. I think that he is a really interesting player. Obviously for the Dolphins, they could use him at right tackle. They have Teron Armstead at left tackle, though he's dealt with some injuries. He's been a really good player for them there. But right tackle, Austin Jackson has been a complete mess when he's played. Eichenberg has been terrible when he's played there as well. So I think just getting some stability at that tackle spot would be a big, big thing for him. Mims has kind of all the traits you look for. Could be a really interesting high upside player for the Dolphins moving forward. Next, we have the Ravens up next. I'm going to go with Kailyn King out of Penn State. King would just be that kind of Robin to Marlon Humphrey's Batman there. I definitely think that would be a great duo. They need somebody that's, the opposing wide receivers can't pick on, the opposing quarterbacks can't go after, because like we said, a lot of really, really good wide receiver duos in this division. You've got Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. You've got Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, or Donovan Peoples-Jones. And then, of course, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You've got to have 2 good corners, and I do think the Ravens have suffered without having somebody opposite Marlon Humphrey. Since Marcus Peters has kind of fallen off a little bit, I think the Ravens defense has struggled. Now that he's no longer there, I definitely think they could use somebody like Kailyn King to really kind of solidify that back end of the defense. For the Chargers, going to go with Cameron Kitchens, the safety from Miami. I definitely think he's got some really fun tools. Pairing him with Derwin James would just be a lot of fun to watch, with very versatile, very fun safeties to watch. I do think that the retirement of Nasir Adderley has left a pretty big hole at that other safety spot. This team doesn't have a lot of massive holes. They still have to get over that hump and win a playoff game and really be a true competitor, but I think that Cam Kitchens could be a big piece in solidifying the back end of that defense, really kind of getting Derwin James his running mate and being a very nice safety duo with a lot of versatility, a lot of athleticism. So I would really like that pick for the Chargers there. Up next for the Cowboys, going to go with a linebacker, but not Jeremiah Trotter Jr., the other Clemson linebacker, actually, Barrett Carter out of Clemson. Just a freaky good athlete. I think he's the best linebacker in this draft at the moment. Just somebody that I think showed natural movement skills. He's pretty good in coverage. He's a good instinctive run defender. I do think he's the best linebacker in this class right now. For the Cowboys, they've had some good linebacker play. I think they could use a true off-ball linebacker. Leighton Vander Esch has struggled to stay healthy. He's been decent when he's out there, but I do think you can improve on that spot. Cowboys really just don't have many major holes. But I do think Barrett Carter would just be one of the better players available and would be able to plug into one of their weaker spots and be a really nice player for him. So I do think that would be a pretty good pick for them there. Up next, the Packers going to take another Clemson player, Andrew Makuba, out the safety out of Clemson. I really think that he is a very fun player to watch as well. Their safety position has been kind of a mess. Darnell Savage hasn't played well. Adrian Amos has been not great when he's played. He's no longer on the team. So there's a lot of big gaping holes at that safety spot. I think Makuba could be a really interesting piece for them. I do think he's got some versatility to play both as a 2-high safety, maybe as a center fielder as well, and maybe some slot corner. I do think he's got some good coverage ability, can come up and hit as well. So definitely think he can be a very interesting player for the Packers at a spot they really need to improve. For the Lions up next, I do think that they could add an edge rusher. Chop Robinson is a really interesting piece. Aiden Hutchinson is a really good player. Obviously, we've got Houston as well, who came on and was super productive in limited snaps. If both of those guys take a big step forward, wouldn't necessarily need an edge rusher, but you really can never get enough pass rushers. Chop Robinson's a really fun one. He's somebody that has really good athleticism, has some nice pass rush moves to go with it as well. Definitely somebody that I just think could be a very nice fit for a Lions team that needs to continue to really evolve their pass rush, get after the passer, find that alpha one, or at least, like a couple of really, really nice complementary pieces. I think Chop Robinson could absolutely be that type of player for them. Up next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Going to go with Graham Barton out of Duke. You could certainly slide him into guard if you wanted to do so. Not sure if he would be able to survive at tackle, but just very interesting, smart, intelligent, hardworking, hard-nosed offensive lineman. I think he's a good run blocker. He provides you some positional versatility. Somebody that I do think is probably most naturally going to be a guard, but the Jaguars could just improve the offensive line. I think he could fill in a variety of different spots, and I definitely think that protecting Trevor Lawrence needs to be priority number one for this Jaguars team. This offensive line has never necessarily been a massive problem, but certainly not a strength of the team as well. And Barton could be a big piece in kind of potentially moving towards that being a strength of this team. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills. Going to go with Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Listed as a corner, I think he might play some safety as well at the NFL level. He's got pretty good athleticism, really good ball skills. He's got a really, really nice frame. He's got good size, good athleticism, good speed. I do think that he could be a really nice safety for them. Maybe could stay at outside corner, but I definitely think that regardless, the Bills could absolutely use him just on the back end of that defense. Just a very interesting player and somebody that I do think could be a very nice piece for the Bills at the next level. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to go with Braylon Trice, the edge rusher from Washington. And I do think that with Trice, obviously, the Eagles are always going to love edge rushers, pass rushers, players that they can get after the quarterback, get in the trenches. They have a ton of edge rushers, but Howie Roseman pretty much only invests in the offensive and defensive line on day one of the draft. I think Trice could be a really nice piece for them. He was pretty productive in the Pac-12. He's shown some really nice things as a pass rusher. He does need to get better as a run defender, but I think as a pass rusher, he shows some great things, certainly first-round caliber, and I do think for the Eagles that draft a lot based on value and draft in the trenches, he could certainly be a piece that they look to take in round one. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Going to go with Donovan Jackson, the guard out of Ohio State. He's still got a ways to go to really be a true complete guard, but I think he fits the San Francisco wide zone system very well. He's a very athletic, good move guard. He's somebody that in pass protection, is very agile. He's somebody that can stay with players very well. He needs to get nastier in the run game, but I think in a move system that really asks him to reach block and be somebody that is really effective, climbing to linebackers on the move, he could be a great player in that system. I do think the 49ers have a kind of concerning amount of depth, especially on that offensive line, but even the starters aren't great as well. I think Donovan Jackson could fill in really nicely at one of those guard spots and be a great player for them moving forward. For the Cincinnati Bengals up next, going to go with a very interesting player, Rook Ahorohoro from Clemson, and Clemson has had a lot of players in the first round here as well. He really wasn't asked to get after the passer too often at Clemson, but I think on the interior he showed some really nice flashes of being a very, very fun player, and I definitely think that he's continued to grow every single year. It's kind of hard with Clemson defensive linemen because they're not always asked to really be a true pass rusher, get after the quarterback. They run a lot of stunts. They run a lot of contain assignments. And I do think that it is going to be interesting to see if he's really asked to get after the passer. What can he do? But I thought he was a really good run defender, can shed blocks. He's just a very good player at the point of attack. And definitely somebody I think the Bengals could use. DJ Reader might not be there the next year. He couldn't necessarily fill in 100% to that role, but I do think he would alleviate some of the pain of losing DJ Reader, though he's one of the best nose tackles in the league. And I think that Rook could be a very fun player for the Bengals moving forward. Then we have the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to go with a wide receiver. I do think they need to add to that room. I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy, who's a true deep threat, somebody that could be a true downfield weapon for Patrick Mahomes. And I do think that that's something that they really need. Obviously, after losing Tyreek Hill, they haven't had that dominant field stretcher. I think Xavier Worthy, though he is tiny, could provide some of that there and be a great player for the Chiefs moving forward. That's going to do it for our 2024 preseason NFL mock draft. Let me know what you think. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who do you want your team to take in this way too early look at the 2024 NFL draft? If you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button down below as well. Helps grow the channel. While you're down there, hit that like button as well. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.